Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator Weekly Overlook. And today I'll be covering the weather for the week of September 17th until September 24th. So currently, let's take a look at the jet stream and the path that the jet stream may take this week and how it might influence our threat for severe thunderstorm development. Starting off with this trough that we have for the eastern United States, this trough is currently triggering severe thunderstorm development for the marginal threat that we have across the eastern United States coast. However, I'm not going to go into detail about that in this video. I already have our daily forecast out that you can go check out if you're curious about those storms, but I will not be covering those storms in this video. After this trough does trigger severe thunderstorms across the coast of the eastern United States, this trough is expected to move out into the Atlantic Ocean and mostly stay out of play and shouldn't really trigger severe thunderstorm development or pose a threat for severe thunderstorm development for anywhere else this week. Our threat for severe thunderstorm development is going to be back towards the western United States again. You can see that we do have a developing threat of severe thunderstorm development, mainly focusing on this trough that is coming out of the Pacific Northwest. You can see that we do have this deepening trough that is expected to come out of the Pacific Northwest, as well as the subtropical jet that is expected to combine with this trough that is expected to continue eastward and trigger some severe thunderstorm development and lead to the threat of some severe thunderstorms across the Central Plains. But before we go into that, let's take a look at our Tuesday threat. As far as our threat for Tuesday, let me actually pull up the current SPC outlook for Tuesday. We do have a slight risk for Tuesday across Oklahoma into Texas. Then we also have the threat of some significant impacts with this slight risk for Tuesday, which is more than definitely going to be increased by Tuesday when Tuesday does roll around. We are definitely going to see the threat of some significant impacts from this, including the threat of mainly hail, as well as the threat of some significant winds. We could probably see some significant winds from this, but overall, our main threat from this is going to be the threat of significant hail. We are expected to see large hail and possibly even gorilla hail on Tuesday across this region, and that should be the main threat. But we should also have the additional threat of tornadoes. Overall, our directional shear is going to be questionable. However, the models have been suggesting that we could definitely have some directional shear to support the additional tornado potential when Tuesday does roll around. However, I will again have a forecast on this whenever Tuesday does roll around, and I will update you on the tornado potential. But overall, our tornado potential might be a little questionable, but we should definitely have some directional shear that would be enough to support the threat of a couple tornadoes across this region. But overall, our main threat from this is going to be large to very large hail with our elongated hodographs. We are expected to have severely elongated hodographs. The mid-level flow is going to be overall fairly weak. However, the upper level winds, I can't show you the upper level winds with Radar Omega, but I can describe to you the upper level winds on the GFS models from Pivotal Weather. We are expected to see upper level winds on the 300 millibars that are going to be getting up to 100 knots and above. So we are definitely expected to see severely elongated hodographs to support the possibility of large to gorilla hail on Tuesday across this region. That should be the primary threat, alongside the additional threat of maybe some significant winds and the secondary threat of tornadoes across this region. Overall, I'm a little uncertain about the tornado potential, but I will definitely update you guys on Tuesday about the tornado potential. But overall, again, the main threats coming from this on Tuesday should be damaging winds and large to very large hail and even gorilla hail. But then let's take a look at the long-term threat of severe thunderstorms across the Central Plains. You can see that the trough that I did mention earlier, coming out of the Pacific Northwest, is expected to combine with the subtropical jet and lead to some lee troughing across the Central Plains, where the mountain line is, on the eastward side of the mountain line. If you don't know what lee troughing is, let me draw you a little picture here. So we have the mountains to the west of the Central Plains, but then we have the mountains are going to be blocking a lot of the lower level and surface winds. However, the mid-level and upper-level winds are still able to get across, which leads to an area of low pressure towards the lower levels and mid-levels, on the leeward side of those mountains, which leads to the threat of severe thunderstorm development across the leeward side of those mountains across the Central Plains. So that's essentially what lee troughing is. But this also leads to orographic elongated hodographs, where the mid-level and upper-level winds are still able to get above those mountains, leading to elongated hodographs as we have a lack of low-level winds. So we could definitely see the threat of hail with some of these lee troughing storms. Again, we could definitely see the threat of some hail. Some threats for hail could include the threat of maybe large hail across the Central Plains, as well as the threat of some tornadoes. We are definitely expected to see some directional shear from this to support the threat of tornadoes across this region. But overall, we should see the threat of hail, tornadoes, and the threat of damaging winds with these storms across the Central Plains. But then this low pressure system that from this trough is expected to continue propagating northeastward and situate itself somewhere either in the northern Central Plains or the northern Central Plains. Anywhere in this circle is where that trough could situate itself. A lot of the models have been indicating that it could go further up north, but some models have indicated that could be across some of the more central plains. However, with this trough, we could definitely see the threat of severe thunderstorm development across the Central Plains and into the Midwest as well. We could definitely see the threat of some severe thunderstorm development. However, this trough is expected to come into play towards the end of this week, towards the later half of this week, past Wednesday. But again, I will be releasing daily forecast on these events when it does roll around. So that's essentially it for the jet stream. Again, we could definitely see the threat of some significant impacts on Tuesday, as well as the threat for later on this week. We could see the threat of hail, tornadoes, and damaging winds across the Central Plains. Taking a look at our dew points and how it might affect our instability and where our instability is going to be at the time of these severe thunderstorms, and where our fuel for severe thunderstorm development is going to be for this week. You can see that we are expected to have building moisture across the Central Plains, which will also lead to building instability across the Central Plains as well. We are expected to see a strong southerly flow out of the Gulf of Mexico, which will lead to building moisture and building instability across the Central Plains. Wherever we have moisture, we have instability. So we are definitely expected to see tons of instability across the Central Plains, which will definitely fuel our severe thunderstorms and lead to the threat of our hail, our tornado, and our damaging wind threats for our severe thunderstorms across the Central Plains this week. We are expected to have several sharp dry lines, which will aid in severe thunderstorm development, especially on some of the later days in the week, wherever I was mentioning that low pressure system that is expected to situate itself somewhere in the Central Plains. We are expected to have a very, very sharp dry line across the Central Plains, which will definitely lead to severe thunderstorm development from Kansas into Iowa and southern Minnesota. That is going to be another date to watch out for. Is going to be, I think Sunday of this week. We could definitely see some strong severe thunderstorm development into the Central Plains and the Midwest. So that's another date to watch out for, but we are expected to see building instability and building moisture, which will definitely fuel our severe thunderstorm potential for across the Central Plains. Taking a look at our temperatures and where our heat may go for this week, we are expected to see a return of above average temperatures into the Central Plains. Currently, that trough that did pass through the eastern United States did cool things down significantly. However, as that trough does move out of the region, we are expected to see building heat across the eastern United States again. But then across the Central Plains, we haven't really had much activity across the Central Plains in the second half of this week. We have had severe thunderstorms across Texas, but everywhere else we haven't really had all that much activity as far as severe thunderstorms, so we haven't really had anything to cool down the Central Plains. So we are expected to see some building heat across the Central Plains, but then as that trough does move through, we are expected to see much cooler temperatures. We are expected to see much of that heat being pushed out to the east and then out into the Atlantic Ocean. So we are expected to see some cooling after this trough does move through, but for a couple days towards the beginning half of this week and into the early second half of this week, we should see some very widespread temperatures that could get up into the 90s again for much of this week across the Central Plains. So do keep that in mind if you do live in the Central Plains. We are expected to see a return of above average temperatures into the Central Plains, but some of that heat should be dissipated and moved further eastward after this trough does move through in the later half of this week. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. If you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.